Okay, so it's the introduction to the solar system. So let's look at the learning aims. So it's an overview of what makes up our solar system, an understanding of what a planet is, a discussion of other solar system objects such as moons, asteroids, and comets. So we're going to start with that now. So next slide. So the most important thing is what makes up the solar system. So we have the sun, which we're going to talk about in a few moments. We've got 8 planets. As you may know, that obviously Pluto was demoted a while ago now. It's 2006, that was a long time ago. Moons that orbit the planets, they're also part of our solar system. Dwarf planets such as Pluto, asteroids, and comets. Okay, so we're going to look at the biggest part of our solar system, possibly the most important, you could say. So also at the centre of the solar system, everything orbits it. Okay, so apart from the moons, which orbit their planets, but all the planets and the asteroids and the comets orbit the sun. So the sun is a star, so it's similar to the stars you see in the night sky, but it's very close, but it looks different. It's very, very large. It's so large, all the planets, as you can see, can fit inside it and have lots of room, obviously to spare. So it's bigger than all the planets put together. It provides light and heat for all of the life on Earth. Without the sun, there is no life. It's where all the energy comes from. The energy, it's not as some people think, a huge ball of fire. It's not a fire, is it? It's gas. Some people say they got gas. Yeah, it's made of gas. That's correct. Hydrogen, helium, but it's in the core of the sun, so right in the center of the sun. There's a process called nuclear fusion going on, where hydrogen atoms stick together or fuse. That's where fusion, the word, comes from, making helium and releasing energy, mostly in the form of light. So that's obviously when we see sunlight. That's where the energy comes from. There's nuclear fusion in the core of the sun. Okay, so it's correct to say the sun is made of gas, but it is not on fire. It has nuclear reactions going on inside it to produce all that energy. So we'll start with the planet. So we'll start with the closest to the sun and work our way outwards in a most sensible way. So it's nearest to the sun, also the smallest planet. Okay, smallest planet, Mercury. So it's only 58 million kilometres from the sun. The Earth, by contrast, is 158 million. So it's a lot nearer the sun. It only takes 88 days or 88 Earth days to orbit the sun. But its day, so the time it takes to rotate on its own axis is 58 Earth days. So it's kind of like there's only 2 Mercury days for every Mercury year. It's got kind of 2/3 orbit. It's a bit strange. So yeah, it would take 58 Earth days for the sun to rise and set on Mercury. Quite a bizarre experience, I think. 21 from Earth. So it doesn't really have any atmosphere, okay, which causes it to have extreme temperatures. So there's no atmosphere to keep the heat. So at night on Earth, that obviously doesn't go too cold in a lot of places because the atmosphere, like the gases, to keep the Earth warm even at night when we don't face the sun. So that's why we've got on here the day side of Mercury. So the part that faces the sun, temperatures reach 430 degrees Celsius, but it's still not the hottest planet. Okay, still not the hottest. While at night temperatures drop to minus 180 degrees during the night. So cold at night, but very hot. There's not really a nice kind of between the Mercury, because there's no atmosphere to retain that heat or to stop it heating up too much. I think to stop the sun, and it's so close to the sun that it heats up a lot. So going out on Venus, actually the closest planet to the sun. It's not Mars. Venus is closer, and also it's closest in size and shape to the Earth as well. Sometimes called Earth's twin. Okay, it's not. It's similar size and shape, but it's nothing really like any other aspect. So the hottest. So this is the hottest planet in the solar system. Not the one nearest the sun. That'd be more sensible, but it's because it's got such a thick atmosphere that it retains its heat. So actually is made of sulfur dioxide and sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide, and it doesn't allow heat to escape. It's got a very, very pressurized atmosphere, so it's 465 degrees the temperature, so it's hot enough to melt lead on its surface. So you can imagine that any spacecraft going to Venus would have a bit of trouble because it would melt them. There was a spacecraft called Mariner that went there that, yes, over time it kind of melted. It's quite impressive though. It did last a few hours for Mercury, until it melted, really. There's been a recent news event, okay, that that there was some molecules found in the atmosphere of Venus that could be a sign of life, but doesn't mean that there is life there. It could be other process, but it's an interesting development. It's so hot, you wouldn't imagine there's any life on it, would you? I wouldn't imagine Venus to have any life, but you never know. So it doesn't have any moons. Mercury or Venus do not have any moons at all. So Earth, we're familiar with Earth. So the average temperature on Earth, you averaged out everything, 15 degrees Celsius. Also, it has the largest moon. So our moon we see in the sky is the largest compared to the planet in the solar system. So we've actually got a very big moon compared to the size of the Earth, which could be important to life. Okay, so the moon and the sun form the tides, which could have played an important role in the formation of life on Earth. Because lots of life formed in the oceans, and that could have played a huge part in how actually life developed on the Earth. And that goes on to the only planet that's known to have life on it. Okay, and there's no life has been found anywhere else in the solar system that's confirmed life. Okay, so we're actually quite special in that regard. But I think we're quite familiar with what Earth is like. Obviously, any planet with that amount of liquid water, there's lots of things about Earth that make it good for life. Only breathable atmosphere as well. No other planet or moon has a breathable atmosphere. Some have atmospheres, but they're not breathable to humans. Okay, Mars, quite an interesting one. Lots of study goes on with Mars, isn't it? It's quite a lot smaller than the Earth. If you look at the photograph there, not too much like Earth. So as ice caps. So in fact, you can see that the ice caps. There's ice on it, so water ice, liquid water in some parts of it. People get a bit excited about Mars because it's liquid water, but unfortunately, its atmosphere again is not breathable. You can't go to Mars and breathe its atmosphere. It's mainly made of carbon dioxide, which humans we don't breathe. 2 small moons. So this is the other planet moons. So they're called Phobos and Deimos. They mean fear and panic in Greek. So Phobos comes from the word phobia, like to be fearful. They're very small compared to the planet, nowhere near as big as our moon. Many missions. So like Opportunity, that's Spirit, Opportunity, the Mars landers, some of the Mars orbiters, lots and lots of missions. Viking missions have been to Mars to see what it's like on Mars. Even though it's a small planet, it has a few features, to it. So the biggest canyon in the solar system, like the Grand Canyon, a huge scar across its surface there. It's in shadow a bit there. It's a huge scar. It's longer than the United States itself. It's very long. Tallest volcano in the solar system, Olympus Mons, 21 kilometers high. It's 2.5 times taller than Mount Everest. It's got a huge volcano on the surface as well. It's funny for a little planet. It's got such a huge features on it. Okay, Jupiter, largest of all the planets. Probably heard about Jupiter before. It's just so big. It has the shortest day. Being the largest planet, it actually rotates the fastest. Only 12 hours to rotate once, so it spins around very quick. Okay, over 50 moons at the current count. So they're discovered all the time. The main moons in this photograph here. So Ganymede, so down the bottom there, Ganymede, Io, Callisto over here, and Europa. Some people get a bit excited about Europa. They think there might be a liquid ocean underneath because it's covered in ice. Could be a liquid ocean underneath there. So they're called the Galilean moons. They were discovered by Galileo and physicist and astronomer in 1610. So a long time ago, they were discovered through a telescope. Very interesting moons. They've all got little different features. The moon says it's very volcanic. It's Io. It's not Elo. It's Io. It's pronounced. They're all named after the Roman gods and goddesses and other characters in mythology. Great spot on Jupiter, so this is the Great Red Spot, sometimes known as. So it's a storm. It's a storm that's been going on for over 300 years. So even when Galileo looked through a telescope, he saw the storm The reason why that's lasted for so long is because the whole of Jupiter is made of gas. Okay, that on Earth, storms stop because they hit land. They run out of power, but there's nothing to stop this storm. It just keeps going. Okay, and all of it's got very, very beautiful clouds formations. Like this is a very nice recent photograph from some mission to Jupiter, but it's much, much bigger than the Earth there. You can see Earth can just barely fit in the corner of Jupiter. So Saturn, the second largest planet in the solar system. Yeah, still quite sizable, isn't it, compared to it's a very beautiful planet, lots of people's opinions. So it's got most famous for its ring system. So they're made of particles of ice and rock. They're not solid, you can't stand on them. Probably the remains of a moon that broke up due to gravity. Probably the gravity was too strong and it broke the moon up to form these ice and rock rings. Also, it's over 30 moons. Okay, so it's not got as many as Jupiter, but it's getting up there. So Titan is its biggest moon. Iapetus, Hyperion, what I've heard of. It's also got moons that actually orbit in these gaps called the shepherd moons, which keep the rings in place. I always find that quite cute to know there's little moons that orbit in the planet's rings. Actually, didn't mention that Ganymede there is the biggest moon in the solar system. So you'd expect that, wouldn't you? The biggest planets have the biggest moon in the solar system, but it's bigger than our moon. Okay, Saturn, also a very light planet. Okay, it's actually lighter. Its whole kind of gas. It's actually less dense than water. Okay, it's a very light planet, but it's also very big, so it's very massive. Okay, so Uranus, quite underappreciated planet, but I think very interesting. Actually orbits on its side, so it's like it tumbles around the sun. I always found that very interesting. It's got a ring system. Okay, so not quite as impressive as Saturn's, but it's got a ring system going on, and it goes around the side, like the side of the planet. That's kind of interesting. It takes 42 years to orbit the sun, so yeah, that's like a long time. It's got quite a few moons. But one of its most famous, I think the most interesting moon, is a moon called Miranda, which looks like it's been smashed apart and put back together again, which probably happened. It probably got too much gravity. It was like it went too near Uranus and got broken up and then reassembled itself. And it looks like this now. I think it's very interesting how it looks. Not many missions have been past Uranus. There's not as many photographs of this planet as there is of Jupiter and Saturn, unfortunately. You find that it's the same with Neptune. There's just not as many photographs of it or its moons. It's from the Voyager 2 mission that went there in 1989. So that's actually near to when I was born. So it's quite a long time ago now. Okay, Neptune. Okay, yeah, again, not many photographs of Neptune. It's just so far away that missions take years and years and years to get there. It could take that 20 years to get there, the missions to these planets. So, yeah, the furthest planet from the sun, it takes 165 Earth years to orbit the sun. So that's longer than any person's ever lived. So no one's ever lived a whole Neptunian year. It takes that long. At some points, it's further from the sun than Pluto is. I know Pluto's not a planet anymore, but just saying reference. Sometimes it's actually further away. So actually, it's a very long orbit. It's the coldest planet. It looks it as well. It's the coldest planet, minus 200 degrees Celsius. Also the windiest place in the solar system. So it's actually got a little storm by itself. It's got a little blue storm. It's called the Scooter, and they call it because it whips around the planet really quickly. 14 known moons. Again, more could be discovered. Not many missions have been out there, including Triton, the coldest moon. Okay, it's quite a big moon, but it's not too much bigger than Earth as the other gas giants. Okay, so it's the smallest gas giant. It's a nice deep blue colour. I always like the colour of Neptune. Okay, so I need to sort of explain a bit more about what a planet is. Okay, so to be a planet, I'm going to move the picture of myself here. Yeah, not that important. To be a planet, the body, so like the symbol of rock, or has to form a sphere. So it's like be a ball shaped, and have cleared its orbit. That means it can't orbit with other things. Can't orbit in like a belt, what's called, of other things. It has to be on its own. So, example, if the moon kind of went rogue and orbited the sun on its own, that would be a planet. Okay, but of course it orbits a planet, making it a moon. Okay, so a planet has to be right on its own. Okay, so it's all on its own. The these dwarf planets, you've probably heard of some of them. Pluto, been relegated to a dwarf planet, had a mission go to it though, so it has that going for it. They orbit in a belt, so these all orbit together, kind of very close together in orbit. So you've got Eris, some of them just got names, Haumea, Marke, also other objects that orbit out there. So that's why. So yeah, they orbit in a belt, so they don't orbit on their own. So it was reclassified in 2006 that it has to orbit on its own to be a planet, because otherwise we have to have about 20 planets or something like that. I think that it was a sensible decision. Okay, asteroids. So many films, science fiction, are made about asteroids. So the asteroid belt. So all the asteroids are found between Mars and Jupiter. So that's called the main asteroid belt. So it's made of irregular rocky bodies called asteroids. Okay, so Ceres, Vesta, Pallas, Hygeia. Sometimes you can see them in the night sky if you've got a telescope. They can be quite bright. I just actually made a note there about the dwarf planets actually do orbit in their own belt called the Kuiper belt. So they orbit further out beyond Neptune in the Kuiper belt, whereas these orbit a little bit closer in the, it's just called the asteroid belt. This was first discovered, that's why I had the name the asteroid belt. Okay. So also in our solar system, comets. Okay, so comets are known for being, again, quite aesthetically pleasing, quite beautiful things. So comets are made of ice and rock, so they're a bit more icy, very cold objects. So they have very large, what's known as elliptical, so it's like a squashed circle orbits. Often take years. Some take hundreds of years. Or Halley's comet says it's about 84 years to come back. I think it was near Earth in 1987, and I might live long enough to see it, because I was born in 89. I might live long enough to see it come back. But often people only see comets once in their life, because they orbit such big orbits that you only ever see them once, really. So they come from again another belt, but more diffuse, so kind of spread out, really far away. So sort of up here on the scale, much further away than the other objects. It's called the Oort cloud. It's got quite a nice name, named after someone discovered it. It's named Oort. The Oort cloud the comets come from. So they're famous for their appearances. So when they approach the sun, so this comet's coming near the sun, so it comes about here. The ice melts as a comet, and it produces a gas tail. So that's the tail you see, is a sort of vapor and gas tail that always points away from the sun. Okay, so even when it's coming in, it's pointing away, and it's going away. If it's even moving in this direction, its tail is still pointing away from the sun. Sometimes we don't actually know how bright a comet's going to be, because they're quite so you can predict their orbits, but you can't predict how bright they're going to be, because that's why sometimes you see, oh, this comet may be this bright, and then sometimes it's brighter and it's spectacular to see. Other times it's a bit of a letdown. But yeah, I think comets are very spectacular to see if you get a chance to see a comet. Okay, so I'm just going to go over what are the main things that make up the solar system. So overview of what makes up our solar system. So that's that page. So the sun, 8 planets, moons that orbit the planets, dwarf planets such as Pluto and Marke, Eris and Haumea, others. Asteroids, okay, so they're made of rock, orbit in the asteroid belt, and the comets, they're made of rock and ice, so very icy. That's the difference between they have from the Oort cloud. Okay, so that's the parts, or what the planet is. So it has to be a spherical, it has to have cleared its orbit, it has to orbit on its own to be a planet. Other objects, moons, we talked about that, orbit planets, asteroids in the asteroid belt, and comets. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. That's our brief view of the solar system. So thank you for joining the class. I enjoyed talking about the solar system, and hope to see you in another class, another video. Goodbye.